Software vendors love to sell ERP as a business transformation silver bullet. But in Birmingham, that bullet just didn't miss the target. It caused a £144 million self inflicted wound that brought Europe's largest local authority to its knees. 5 years late, 7 times over the budget, and the council effectively bankrupt. But here is the part that should make your blood boil. This isn't just a delay. They are now re-implementing from scratch. So they literally threw away the £144 million into the fire and are starting over. Along the way, they committed the ultimate sin in governance. They turned off fraud detection audits for 18 months and managed to misallocate £2 billion in taxpayer transactions. As someone who has spent 25 years in the ERP and AI world, and someone who has been a client as well as an advisor, I'm tired of watching these out-of-the-box promises turning into career-ending nightmares because of a lack of a backbone at the top. Now, today we are dissecting the anatomy of the Birmingham Oracle disaster. We are identifying the 3 root causes of the systemic failure and how you can ensure your organization isn't the next headline. I'm Noel Benjamin DCosta. Let's look at what really happened behind the closed doors of this £144 million scandal. So here is the horror story moment. They didn't just break the bank reconciliation process. They broke it so badly that the council had to spend over £5 million just on manual labor to do what the software was supposed to do out of the box. So think about that. You buy a Ferrari, Oracle Fusion, and then you pay a team of people to push it down the road because you customize the engine until it wouldn't start. By forcing a modern cloud-native system to mimic a 20-year-old legacy SAP R3 workflow, they didn't just blow their budget, they lost their ability to produce auditable accounts. And this isn't just an IT glitch, it is an institutional blackout. Now, I'm not here to bash Birmingham. That's not the way I work. I'm here because there's a high probability that you are sitting in a steering committee right now, watching the same fuse being lit. And you've probably seen Eric Kimberling's video on why ERPs fail, and he's spot on. But from my 25 years in the trenches, as both the guy who signs off on the checks and the advisor trying to save the project, I can tell you that public sector failure hits different. There is a massive gulf between the consultant strategy and the client side survival. So here is my challenge to you. Today, open your current statement of work and look for the word customization or extension or bolt on. If you see them sitting next to a standard process like payroll or banking reconciliation, ask yourself, are we building this because the business needs to survive or because the leadership is too afraid to tell the staff that they have to change how they work? If you can't answer that honestly, you are not an implementer. You are an accomplice to a £144 million disaster. Now, you might be thinking, Noel, surely a £144 million project had experts. And you might be right, they had rooms full of them. But here's the problem, they're all rented. This brings us to the real disease in the public sector, and I call it the hollow client. Over the last 2 decades, we have systematically hollowed out our internal IT and our finance capability. So we don't have intelligent customers anymore. We have check signers. So let's look at the Birmingham evidence. At one point, they actually turned off the fraud detection audits for over around 18 months because the system was too complex to manage. Now, think about that from a governance perspective. When a department head demanded a bespoke customization that broke the bank reconciliation, who was there to say no? The external system integrator? The complexity pays their mortgage. The internal stakeholder, they didn't understand the architecture well enough to push back. As a business advisor myself, I can tell you if your organization's brain is fully or entirely outsourced, you aren't a client. You're a cash machine for the big vendors. You cannot buy what you do not understand. Here is the real taxpayer impact. So in the private sector, a failed ERP means a bad quarter and maybe a hit to the share price. But in the public sector, it means the city goes effectively bankrupt. So Birmingham now is facing a total loss of £225 million when you factor in the written off savings. And that is roughly £200 for every single person living within the council's boundaries. So the audit blackout, they misallocated the £2 billion in transactions to the wrong year. Imagine trying to run a household, let alone a city, when you can't trust your own bank balance. The second one was the re implementation trap, because the first attempt was such a mess that they are now re implementing from scratch. That's years of taxpayer money literally deleted. And the third one is the trust tax. So every time this happens, the public loses faith in the digital transformation agenda. It makes it 10 times harder for the next leader to innovate because the word ERP has become synonymous with bankruptcy. So you aren't just losing money, you're losing the ability to govern. So, how do you avoid becoming the next headline? It starts with the philosophy that is easy to say, but as Birmingham has proved it, incredibly hard to execute, fit to standard. So, Birmingham now is forced to re implement their Oracle system from scratch. Now, that is a 5 year, £144 million admission that their customizations were terminal. To survive, you have to distinguish between two battlegrounds, the process on one side and the accounting on the other. So let's look at the process first. Now, this is the workflow, the approvals, the clicks, the UI. I know your users will scream that the cloud interface is clunky compared to the old 1990 SAP R3 screen. But the fix here isn't the code, it's the adoption. The leadership challenge is retraining your people's hands and not recoding the vendor's software. Now, the second one is accounting. Now, this is the red line. In modern ERPs like Oracle Fusion, the universal journal is your single source of truth. Birmingham tried to force a custom banking reconciliation tool to act like their old system. So the result? They misallocated £2 billion in transactions. So when you write a Z code, and I'm talking about it from an SAP language, to force a debit where the system expects a credit, you're not customizing, you're corrupting the very integrity of your institution. Now, that isn't an IT decision, that is a financial suicide. So here is a challenge I give to every leader sitting on a steering committee. Look at your current list of must have customizations. Audit that list with one brutal question. Are we building this because the business needs to survive, or are we building it because the business is too lazy to change? When a department head tells you that they can't use a standard process, they're usually saying that they won't change their habit. If you sign off on that customization just to keep the peace in the boardroom, you aren't being a supportive leader. You're actually becoming an accomplice to a £144 million disaster. You're validating the drift that leads to bankruptcy. So, who holds the line? You must appoint a guardian of the standard. Now, this isn't a project manager, this is a senior leader with a single difficult KPI, the power to say no. They need the executive authority to overrule anyone, no matter how senior or who demands a customization just because that's how we've done it in the past. Now, the guardian cannot fight this battle alone. If the CEO and the CFO don't back them when the noise gets loud, and believe me, it will get loud, that project is already dead. You simply cannot outsource your own backbone. Now, let's talk about the future. Everybody is talking about agentic AI. AI that doesn't just suggest actions, but actually executes them. Now, in the UK and the US, boards are demanding an AI strategy. But here's the hard truth: you cannot put a Tesla engine into a stagecoach. If your data is buried under layers of 20-year-old Z codes or customizations, and bespoke fixes like the one that broke, Birmingham's cash flow, your AI will be blind. It won't be able to find the data, let alone trust it. How can an AI agent automate your procurement if it cannot even reconcile your bank statement? And that is why the clean core strategy isn't just an IT preference, it's an AI prerequisite. So, in systems like SAP S4HANA, a clean core means your data ontology is standardized. It means that when an AI agent looks for a supplier, it finds one single source of truth and not 17 variations created by different departments over 2 decades. So, if you want to move from being a hollow client to an intelligent enterprise, your guardian of the standard isn't just protecting the budget, they're protecting the very ability to compete in the age of AI. And without a clean core, your AI strategy is just very expensive, wishful thinking. So, if you're a CIO or a CFO in London, New York, or anywhere in between, here are your 5 golden rules to survive in 2026, especially when it comes to these type of implementations. Process first, software second. Do not automate a mess. If your process is broken, AI and ERP will only make that mess more expensive and faster. So fix the workflow before you touch the code. Number two is the clean core mandate. Every line of custom Z code you write today is a technical debt tax that you will pay for the next decade. A clean core is your only ticket to the agentic AI revolution. Number three is rebuild your internal brain. Stop being a hollow client. You need internal architects who understand the system just as well as your consultants do. And you need to own your architecture or it will own you. Number four is governance with teeth. You need a board level steering committee that has the mandate to say no. If IT is running it in a vacuum, you've already lost. And number five is decouple action from record. Now, for me, this is the most important rule of law. Your ERP should not be your everything. The biggest lie in ERP is that the system has to do everything. And this, for me, is where ServiceNow comes in. If you want to avoid the rigidity that killed Birmingham, you stop building complex front end portals inside your core ERP. So think of ServiceNow as your system of action. Let it handle the user experience, the portals, the approvals, the messy workflows, the things that your users usually like. Let ServiceNow handle that. Meanwhile, you keep your SAP or Oracle core focused on what it does best: the accounting, the ledger, and the universal journal. So, by offloading these workflows to a flexible platform like ServiceNow, you kind of create an agility buffer. So when your business process changes, let's say in 2027, and it will, you will change the workflow in ServiceNow and not the code into your SAP core. So if your modern system is just as rigid as your legacy one, you haven't modernized. You've just migrated your problems. True modernization is about decoupling the action from the record. So the 144 million pound lesson from Birmingham is simple. ERP failure isn't a software problem, it's a leadership problem. Whether you're managing public funds in the UK or a private balance sheet in the US, the principles remain the same. You have to rebuild your internal intelligence, you have to protect your core, and you have to decouple your actions from your records. As someone who spent 25 years bridging the gap between finance and technology, I know how hard it is to say no in that steering committee. But the guardian of the standard isn't just protecting a budget, they're protecting the future of that organization. So I've put together a deep dive into the clean core framework specifically for S4HANA migrations. It's the blueprint of how you move from a legacy mess to an AI ready enterprise. And you can get that video right here. If you found the breakdown useful, hit the like button. It helps get this message to the leaders who need to hear it before they sign off on their next customization. And let me know in the comments, what is the one must have customization currently stalling your project? Let's talk about it. I'm Noel Benjamin DeCosta, and I'll see you in the next one.